Thank you very much to Doco Momo UK, and especially to Hugh over there, who's, where's Hugh? Yeah, thanks, who's really helped set this up for me. You know, we met at a party, and this is the result of drinking together. So tonight I'm going to talk about Patrick Gwynne. Patrick was a friend of mine, actually. When I was at the drawings collection of the RIBA, my curator then, Jill Lever, and I went to see him to get his architectural drawings and models from him. And out of that, I was fascinated because I went to see the house for the first time. This was the early 90s. And Patrick and I seemed to get along really, really well. So he helped me catalog the drawings. And then after that, I used to just drop around all the time. We used to correspond a lot. And then I found myself recording them. You can hear 6 hours of interviews I did with Patrick, which are with the British Sound Archive, with the British Library, and it's online, if the book isn't enough. And then, so we kept it up until his death in 2003. And he always wanted me to do something on him, but I'm always very nervous of working with a live architect. I find when they're passed, it's a little bit easier. And Patrick was a very austere man, in a sense, and he was always steering his own story. So in a lot of ways, it was good that afterwards I was able to discover a lot more about him, things that in a way he wouldn't tell me. And one of those things you'll see is, I knew at the time that he was gay because, it was quite obvious, but he would never speak about anything like that. He'd had a boyfriend who had lived with him. And so it was always very, he was always very reserved, but such a funny man and very witty, but it was always about himself, really, in a sense. So, I'm very pleased that I've been able to get the book out. I've put on the screen, first of all, the cover of the book, which is the Homewood, which I'm sure all of you know already and may have visited it. It's National Trust. And then 2 houses on the far side, which are both in Blackheath. And I live in Blackheath, and the bottom house is number 10 Blackheath Park. And it's a house I even walk by today, and I walk by again when I'm going home. And it really intrigued me to see this house. And I knew the house before I met Patrick, actually. So Patrick is an odd creature in the sense that he never really, he fits into styles. Everybody's into styles, right? So we call him a high modernist. There's little bits of him are brutalist in a way. And there's even some that you call postmodern about him. So he's quite the stylist. He was practiced by himself. He didn't like working with other people, except for at the very beginning, when he was starting out. But he was very much his own man, and he loved working from home alone. Or maybe he had 1 or 2 architects in his office. Before I go on, I just wanted to say I want to dedicate this lecture to Elaine Harwood, who you all know, I'm sure, who passed away last year. Elaine was so instrumental in getting me to write this book on Patrick Gwynne, and I can't tell you how much she helped me getting all the pictures and editing my work and everything, and she never saw the book come out in the end. So Elaine is a great loss to us all, as you well know. So that's the house at number 10. That's from the back of the house. It's all slate and glass. So the front and the back are identical, squeezed in between 2 Georgian houses. Let's see. It's not showing up now. I'm getting it, but I'm not getting it on the screen.
Is it on your screen?
Yes, it is. So, I'll look on the keyboard then.
Yeah, maybe it's this guy's running out of battery.
Oh, that's it. It's run out of batteries.
Sorry about that, he's stuck to the desk now.
No, that's okay. No, it's not still that. Okay, it's going to be quirky. So, and here's a plan of the house. As you can see, it's very odd, really. It's made up of pentagrams. 5-sided rooms. Boy, did Patrick love shapes. And all his buildings are these polygrammatic.
It is working. So you can use it.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, I can use the pointer now. Shapes. So you have the entrance on the street here. You go up this circle, over a ramp into it, central staircase, and each little room. And the rooms were small because Mr. Bilsby, who was the client, loved to party, but liked intimate parties. So you can see it there. And if I just move on, let's see. That's Mr. Bilsby himself. And he was quite the force, big developer in Blackheath, was on Span with Eric Lyons and was responsible for most of the Span housing right from the 1950s on, for buying the plots and getting them going. So I'm having a little odd time here. Oh, you know what I think? I've got a delay. That's what's happening. This is the interior of the house. Now, this is another thing we'll notice about Patrick is his love of color. Right from the 1930s, he was interested in color theory. And there's a little set that he owned of color plates. And so he used to play with these plates. I don't know how much he went on in his later career, but color was always instrumental in his work. And when he spoke about color or wrote about color, it was never red. It was always like a pale red or a steel gray, or it always had an adjective on it. And he was also interested in furniture. He designed all the furniture, built-in furniture, as you can see here, especially let's see if I can do this. The sideboards over here, which the present owner got rid of, but kept on the other side. And for this reason, a lot of mainstream, big name architects didn't like Patrick's work. One of them said to me, a Royal Academician, that, oh, Patrick Gwynne, he's nothing but a decorator. All right? So this is what I think Patrick was up against. Being alone, working on his own, and then not taking part in the Royal Academy or the RIBA or anywhere like that, working by himself. And in a sense, he got lost. And now that the house is National Trust, the Homewood, it's rather changed the profile. Let's see. I think I have to show a blank screen and then it'll come on. So I take it. So again, here's the interior of the house. This is a bathroom. The main bathroom is all black vitrolite. You have very typical this island in the kitchen, in the middle of the kitchen, built-in banquettes. The thing with Patrick, he builds the Homewood in the 1930s, I'll get to this, and then he keeps reusing the same ideas from the house. And in fact, the house becomes his experimental space, because as he changes the Homewood over the 60 years he lives in it, he then transfers those ideas to the houses he's building, or he's building houses and then transfers them back to the Homewood. Okay, here comes a blank screen, and then we go to the thing. This is going to be weird. Okay, and here's the top of the staircase at number 10 Blackheath Park. I mean, it's quite exquisite, isn't it? So he's into modernism, as you can see, with a spare, but look at the way the ceiling doesn't touch the walls, and the same with the post that's going right up. So his attention to detail, any good architect has attention to detail. And I don't know how many lectures I've been to where they say, the architect had good attention to detail, but Patrick had it to an extreme degree. In fact, there's a famous story that he once went around to a house that was being done, that had a post, and the post was like half an inch too thick. and he had the builder tear everything out and put exactly the right amount, of the width for the post. Here's our blank screen. Okay, you get the idea, don't you? So this is the third house that's in Blackheath, but is now gone. It was Bilsby built it in the late 40s, about 1950. It was a bombed out house, and he was able to have Patrick, who he had met in the 30s, because Bilsby had been a builder and worked at the Homewood as a very young man, and they became very good friends. And with this house, you can see here, you can see it's in a tripartite arrangement, and the facade is slightly tilting out. This again becomes a repeating pattern in Patrick's work of the 1950s, as we'll see. And this is a lovely drawing by Patrick. Patrick loved to draw, but never had much time. In the 50s, of course, he had more time, and this was a competition design he did for a Canadian timber company as well. But you can see the arrangement is very similar to the Gwynne house, the Bilsby house he has done in Blackheath. And this is a lovely gouache of the interior. So again, we can see this color coming out, his love of color. Isn't that lovely? I love that. So you can see this is into the dining room, looking through to the kitchen in the design, and how he has, and it's facing the very same way as the facade. So he's picked up this slant that's going through. The other thing Patrick loved, and as part of his love for furniture, is he loved to style. So when we're looking at pictures, photographs of his work, you'll see they're always filled with pots and pans and glasses and the like. And even when I used to go over to his house and say, oh, can I take a photograph of that? And he'd rush over and he'd get the glasses out and the decanters, and he would style everything for the photograph, just like it was for an interiors magazine. And there you can see it as built. It didn't slant out in the case. So this house came down for Bilsby to build another span estate. And there's the kitchen using the island. This is owned actually by Mr. Bilsby's daughter. She's called Tanya House, and she owns these gouaches. And there it is, as built. Again, so he's designing everything here, right down to the fixtures. I presume the clock isn't his, or the cooker, but everything else to detail. And this is the other house in Blackheath Park, number 22, Park Gate, that Mr. Bilsby had Patrick design for his retirement. He didn't want to go up and down the stairs at number 10 Blackheath Park, so he wanted everything on one level. So he had Patrick build this, and get a load of the plan. As you can see, it's octagon. The living area is one central area with living space on one side, kitchen on the other. This is after a conversion. So this was originally the bedroom over here and a studio here. And the next owners moved in and got Patrick back to put a staircase in, put an extra top on it for the bedroom, and then this became their studio themselves for working. And another example, they said to me, it was the Hawkins who bought it. You know Sally Hawkins, the actress? This is where she grew up. So when the Hawkins bought it, they had this addition put in the top here for their bedroom, and they put a window in there without telling Patrick, and because he said no, and when he came to inspect, there was the window. He looked at it and just walked past it, and that was so Patrick. He just would not comment on things. And there's a working drawing. So Patrick, of course, is of that generation pre-computer. Everything is done on paper, as you well know, although in this case it's done on a mylar. He loved modern materials. He loved anything modern, And you can see how everything is squeezed onto one sheet of paper, almost in an arts and crafts manner. If you look at arts and crafts drawings, they often put as much as they can onto one drawing. And in a way, we must remember that Patrick is born in 1913, and his teachers are arts and crafts people, right? So the first drawings he's seeing, he's bringing on. And that's the interior of the last house, styled by Patrick. You can see he's been in there, putting that tea set up. Okay. And this is a house that wasn't built in Blackheath. For Mr. Bilsby, 1960, it was three circles put together. The main sitting area, the bedroom area, and the garage. He loved this separation of space. And this is exactly what you'll see in the Homewood. He separates the living space from the servant space, from the bedroom wing, from the garage area. And for this, Patrick made a model, which is on display in the architecture gallery at the V&A. And it's a charming thing he made himself. And it's got this little ruse on the top, and there's a switch on the side, and there's a motor in the back that looks like that. You switch the switch, and the roofs go up and the roofs go down. They weren't supposed to in real life, but it was just to show Mr. Bilsby the way it worked. And this is something else in Blackheath that didn't take off. It was a scheme to take what is the, oh, you're right, this isn't working. You can see a picture. This is where I come out of my train station. Here, there's a lovely row of shops, and he was going to just demolish them and have put up one of these there. The Blackheath Society fought him off on that one. So Patrick did not like old architecture. Here's a photograph of Patrick in the 90s in his office, which you can see if you visit. Always with a tie, always very smart. So that's a little bit of biography. These are his parents. This is Commander Gwynne. He was with the Royal Navy. He specialized in anti-torpedo equipment. So he was very mechanically minded, which Patrick picked up from. And this is his mother. And Mrs. Gwynne was born in India. She was Anglo-Indian, and she was third generation. Even her father had been born there. And she was coming back with her mother and grandmother to visit England. And the commander was in Istanbul, and they met in Constantinople on a terrace, and it was romance after that. They bought the house where the Homewood is now out in Esher. It's about 12 acres, 10 or 12 acres. And this is the commander on his cutter. Loved machinery, as I said. And he was based down in Portsmouth. And so Patrick moved here when he was about 2 or 3 years old. This Victorian house. Hideous. It was hideous, said Patrick, the whole time. And I've done research on it. It was far from hideous, let me tell you. And it came with this huge acreage, which they farmed. They gardened, actually. So they had market gardens to make money. And they sold their garden, their vegetables and the like, to places like Harrods. But they had greenhouses, and they had a full-time gardener who lived on the estate. But the commander came from a family in Wales that owned a port town, and he decided to sell it. And with the proceeds, this is in the mid to late 30s, with the proceeds, Patrick convinced him to build the new Homewood and to have him design it, and which was an extraordinary thing. His mother was into cooking, which was a very odd thing for a lady at the time, and Patrick became impassioned by food. And this is one of his entries from his own cookbook. You can see it comes from Jamie Oliver. He annotated everything. He typed it out, annotated, and what he's written here is, it says, splendid basic. Delia Smith and S. Clark, you know, who used to have the bakery, make a great palaver, 3 cheese and all that. Those silly women. This boy knows Jamie Oliver, right? So, and again, so food becomes another part of his architecture, and you'll see he does a lot of restaurant buildings, or when he does the houses, which he's more famous for, the kitchens are always out front. Here's Patrick as a young boy at Harrow. So he was shipped off to Harrow School. He never spoke much about it, other than that's where he first fell in love with architecture. It has a fabulous, I don't know if you've been to Harrow or been to Harrow. It's got a wonderful art school, and he able to attend that, and the art master there really encouraged him in architecture, and he won the architecture prize there. Here he is as a young man. Cars were a passion. I mean, a lot of architects in the 1930s especially were into cars. And here he is in his, I think it's something like his 3rd car on his 21st birthday, which is in bright red and yellow. And here is one of his final cars. He used to pull up in this Aston Martin, which he drove very, very fast, but very, very well. And I've been in the car with him. He drives very, very fast, but very, very well, he did. So, the cars were, again, the beauty of these cars. So, after Harrow, he made friends with a few of the, friends. One of the things he did in 1933, when he was 21, was he traveled with his friends. So this is Patrick here and his friend. So I'm traveling, and this is in Switzerland, as he said, because this comes from his album he's created for, made even the lettering for it. But I need hardly tell you or make this comparison between something like Goodbye to Berlin or, the Esher Wood and all that of the period. So these are the things that Patrick would never speak about in a way. But and I would love to have spoken to him about his life back then, and especially how it kind of integrated with his architecture. So one of the places he visited was the Weissenhof estate in Stuttgart, which you all know, I'm sure, with all these famous architectural buildings. And it was a real turning point for him. That and seeing the Mendelssohn department store in Stuttgart, where they were harassed by little Nazis, he said, and there's even photographs he's got of them, because they were taking pictures of a Jewish store. And I looked up the dates he was there, and he was right there during the Kristallnacht, month as well. So he was, but what he did was he got he had a job for a little while with some arts and crafts architects. He hated it, wanted to work for a modernist, and was able to meet Wells Coates at a party. Actually, a friend threw a party deliberately to invite all these modern architects, and he got talking to Mrs. Coates and then with Wells, and then got on with Wells Coates. And I need hardly point out about Wells Coates' work, but this was one of the very first jobs that Patrick worked on. He just worked on a desk in the front, the front entranceway. But while he was working for Wells, his next colleague he sat with was Dennis Lasden. So he and Dennis Lasden were always best of friends. through their whole life as well. But he got little jobs from his friends, and they were all bachelors. And this is one of the bachelor flats he converted. So you can see, I'm sorry that this is not working, but he's got the inset of the alcove. It's very kind of modern. He's got an alto coming here. He's made his friend buy. And he's also designed this radio set because Wells Coates was working for Echo, so he was able to get jobs, I think, very similar to Wells at the same time. But his big project at the end of the 30s, convincing his parents to build the Homewood. And the Homewood is actually, when it came out in the Architectural Review, it came out as Patrick Gwynne and Wells Coates. So there was this whole point I had to work on is this a Wells Coates building or is it a purely Patrick Gwynne? Patrick always said it was his own, but of course he would say that, you would think. But there's overtones of Wells in it, right? But as he said, Wells only came around at the very end and walked around and said, and looked over the drawings, of course. But he wanted his name on it, he said. And the commander said to Patrick, look, you got to give in. So that's why it's a joint name on it. And so when I left his name, Wells Coates' name off it, Shaban Cantacasino, who wrote the first book on Wells Coates, wrote me the nastiest letter, getting after me for, not giving full credit to Wells Coates. So it's always a good one that was done. So the plan of the house is quite spectacular. I mean, you can see it's based on Le Corbusier. Patrick had only seen the Stuttgart. He hadn't been to the villas yet as well. But in plan, you have an entrance. This is the first floor plan, and it's after a bit of renovation he's done over the years. A staircase that comes up. There's a bedroom wing here. The master bedroom is here. His bedroom was here. He had a sister called Babs. That was her room, guest bedroom. And then at the very beginning, Granny lived there. Mrs. Gwynne's mother was here. But he got rid of a lot of these partitions and changed it. But he always lived in this room, his own bedroom, and lived and died in a little single bed here. And then you have the sitting room area here with a fireplace, the wall of glass at the front, the piano and was here, and the dining room, kitchen's at the back. You can see this is after renovation because he's got one of his island tables here, and then he had a staff at the back. So see, look at a few pictures here. So that's that entrance. This is the garden entrance side. There's and then there's a pool here, which was designed by Dennis Lasden as a wedding gift to his parents. And this is the bedroom side wing on it, with the balconies, he said, which were like shelves pulled out. And there's a porte-carré right here going into the main entrance. And there's the staircase. That's a nice view of it. This is the guide I did for the trust. And there's the dining room. I think I took this photograph when Patrick was there. So he changed the house slowly over and over the years. And this is the back wall. And so it's got a hatch, just like in that early Billsby houses, going through into the kitchen here. And then this wonderful piece is a table that folds right into the wall or can fold out and the feet drop down. It's all rosewood at the back. The light got it so bad he had to replace a lot of the pieces because of that brightness on the coming from the windows. And the gardens, he spent all his time creating the garden. And after a while, he was able to get rid of the market garden. He got a full-time gardener as a volunteer, and together they worked creating the spaces that are there now. And there's Commander and Mrs. Gwynne in 1939, I guess it would be 1938, their first year in the house and their last. They were only there for 1 year. It was really sad because the war came, the commander was called up again and was shipped off to Scotland, where he died suddenly. Mrs. Gwynne moved down to one of the cottages, and she died suddenly. Babs went off and worked as personal secretary to Winston Churchill, no, to Mountbatten. And Patrick joined the Air Force and was posted to Saskatchewan in Canada. And here here's a photograph. He's using his brand new camera and slides. This is about 1943, 44. Slides were really something new, 35 millimeter slides. And here he is down in Florida. So he returned to the house. His sister had got married, and the house was now his. So he moved back into the house, set up his office there, and started to get small jobs. And some of these jobs, really pretty ephemeral pieces. Of course, there's no housing or building really going on except for the large LCCs and work. He never wanted to become any part of that at all, even though that's what a lot of people were going into. That just wasn't his thing. So here's a gramophone shop he did in the West End. You can see all the records and the light. He's created the lighting. There's a little booth at the back for listening to. And this is a studio space he added to a very large house up in Hampstead for Sir Clifford Curzon, the great concert pianist. So it's two pianos because his wife played the piano with them. It has this lovely swooping roof on it. I think it's now, I don't think it exists anymore. Just like this doesn't exist anymore. This is a design for a shoe shop in Catford, of all places. Now, if you know Catford, it just doesn't have chic places like this at all. And it lasted 6 months because it just wasn't pulling in the crowds and all that. But the man who commissioned it was very pleased because it got a lot of press time. So, but his biggest job at the period was he worked for the Festival of Britain in the Battersea site for 1951, and he created the Crescent Restaurant, and that was in the Pleasure Gardens at the very end. And so in plan, it took up the whole end of the site. And it was done, as you can see, in a crescent. And you can see Patrick has styled this with the glasses out and the raised chairs. And it was, at the time, the biggest temporary restaurant ever. It sat hundreds and hundreds in it as well. And the way it works is, he was working with Samueli, the structural engineer, who he used a lot, and he became good friends. It's on large poles and tension wires. So it literally is, it's made of canvas and it's literally being pulled open, pulled, to held in place. But he plays this little game with glitter balls through it, and lights are thrown everywhere, little pavilions, and makes it quite fun. So that's about as much fun as Patrick ever got in his architecture. But I think, that's the same for a lot of them. So this is one of the first houses he did. He got to know quite a few actors, and this is Jack Hawkins, who was at the time was the year that this photograph was taken of a house that Patrick had designed for his mother-in-law. The mother-in-law there and his wife and child was up for Academy Award for Bridge on the River Kwai, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I'll show you, and this is the house itself. So you can see it's got this sharp roof and then a pitch roof, and then the pitch comes back at the rear side. He always was, if he could, he would steer his clients directly to the best shops for furniture. Heels, he would literally haul them there. So you can see he's got a bit of the modernism going on there, but this lovely little glass outlook. And here's the next house he did in about 58, 59 for the Edlers. And you can see this lovely shape to it. And there it is, the tripart arrangement that we saw earlier. The house is beautifully kept by the present owner now. And here are the Edlers sitting on it, on the front porch. And you're going to start to recognize everything. Here's the kitchen with his very same lights he's designed. And what we can't see again is color, but I've got a bit of color coming up here. And this, as you can see, so here are the Edlers having a very chic party in their new house. This is Mr. and Mrs. Edler here, and their daughters as well. But it's full of tricks, so that here the cove goes right up, so you can't see the top of the curtains, the curtain rail, for example. The sofas, he's created the sofas, and it's got a built-in phonograph in the corner. There's right in this wall, he loved these. This is the same wall that he used in the Homewood with the dining room on the other side, the same inset for the lighting. But here behind Mr. Edler is a spinning table so that the television could sit on the table in the sitting room or be spun on the other side of the wall to be looked at from the dining room area. And this is a house he does around 1959-60 that's nearby in Hampstead as well. He does 3 houses in Hampstead. And this is for the Bruce, B-R-U-H. And they owned the House of Esher. They were in fashion. And when I met Mrs. Brew, you can see here, this is kind of breaks the rules. For the first time, he's moving away for some reason. And it's a bit of an odd one off. Very fine house, though, from his usual. But here's the interiors. This is a photograph I took of Mrs. Brew and her chauffeur just disappearing from sight on this incredible staircase, which you can see this thick handrails he uses quite often, and the stairs, chunky old stairs, and lots of wood. But here you can see the beauty of the kitchen. Tiles, he loved colored tiles through everything. And this is another house he did in Henley-on-Thames for Dr. Salmon. And it's low-lying and with all the frontage facing one way because it's got the most fabulous views down and over the hills and the garden spaces. You can see the roof has this little tip to it. This is an addition. He made it so that an addition would be put on. So they did. They put a kitchen. They moved the kitchen at the end, so that was like a larger space here. And at the far end is the bedroom wing. And I got a photograph of the interior when I went to visit Dr. Salmon, and that's the interior. So you can see the ceiling with a movement to it. It has 2 grand pianos in it as well. He loved exposed brick, but as many architects did. This was his largest house. This is a Whitley Park, done for Gerald Bentle of Bentle's department store in Kingston. And Mr. Bentle had come to the Homewood. Patrick always invited his clients to the Homewood because that impressed them immediately, right? But Mr. Bentle said, I want a house like this, but bigger out on his estate. He had 200 acres or so for shooting And so you'll have this incredible house. I'll just show it to you here before we go back to the plan. It's concrete panels, large concrete panels that are being lifted into place onto hooks. But if we look at the plan, it's very Homewood again. You have the main sitting area, dining area. You can see how large it is by the size of the grand piano here. The main staircase, a sunroom with louvers that automatically open. This is 1959. This is very early. All the kitchen area, a separate area for the staff to live, and then offices downstairs. The house now, none of us knows what condition it is in. It's been bought several times since, and nobody's been able to get into the grounds. So there's, again, you can see how it apes the Homewood with the timber wall going through, the hatch through to the kitchen with the bar, and even the bar fridge underneath. There's the piano in the far end. And look at the staircase. So the design fitting is his. You'll notice with the handrail, there's absolutely no support. It's got a steel interior that fixes at the top. The stairs look like they're floaty. There's a small steel bar holding up each of the treads, and with a light in it as well. So the whole thing is seen to float. How many people remember this? The Serpentine in Hyde Park. He got to know Charles Forte because he had done the Crescent Restaurant for Forte. That was called Forte Crescent Restaurant for 51. And then he started to get these jobs with Forte, who was the big caterer, as they say, the catering king of Britain. And so this is the Serpentine Restaurant and Cafe that was sadly demolished back in the early 90s. And again, it's made of Patrick's working with his pods idea and his hexagon and octagons. So this section on the top, sitting on these giant concrete pillars, is the bar area. And he's made it to be like, he said, like a botanical garden. So we had plants growing. Nobody took care of them. He said after 1 year they all die. So, but and this has views right over the Serpentine. But lovely, glass that doesn't touch, no joints in the glass. And here's some of his drawings for it. And let's see if I can. Here's a plan. So this is the main section, we call it the plant house bar, with the bar at the top, it's the ground floor, and then the restaurant section at the end. And all this is the concrete paving that he meticulously worked out for it all. So the geometrics, once I get my compass and my rule going, the geometry just comes to me. He said, this is a postcard of it. And still existing at the end of the Serpentine is the Dell, completely gutted on the inside, but still surviving at least. And it's made in plan. If you look at it, it's 16 edges going around, laid over another, 16 on the top. It's all the geometry he's playing. And here's a lovely postcard of the interior, everything designed by Patrick. The plants on the lighting at the top, the concrete seating areas, even the tub chairs Patrick created. View over the Serpentine, and at the back, a bar with a huge enamel mural by Stephen Knapp, who was one of his friends. And he added to the home a large Stephen Knapp enamel. If you go now to the house, I think I've got a picture later. And his other fun one he did is an extension to York Theatre, Theatre Royal, in this wonderful photograph that the English Heritage photographer took. So he gutted the theatre itself and renewed it, but put on this concrete glass extension on the side, which is really popular. I've been there a couple of times, even recently, and it's a place to go and go and eat. Again, with one of his spectacular staircases. Just like in the Serpentine, he uses these mushroom columns, as he called them, which worked in this case because the building was neo-Gothic, or Victorian Gothic, and it kind of welled together. Here's two fabulous motorway services area on the M62 between Manchester and Liverpool, one which only exists now. He said, this was really great. He said, 2 buildings, and I got paid for 2 buildings, and they're both the same. And he went out to Malta to try and build a hotel with Forte. It fell through, but he took Kenneth Monk, his structural engineer, with him, and Monk fell in love with Malta and had this apartment building built in St. Paul's Bay. If you know the area, it's where St. Paul was shipwrecked. And it's these balconies that you can almost see pulling out just like in the Homewood. And Monk took the whole of the top floor. And you can see here, it's staggered. So it's in 2 sections, and in each is staggered. So you'd have to walk up a few steps to get to the other section of your apartment to give variety. And in the same year, 1968, for Monk, he builds a seaside house down in Angmering-on-Sea in Sussex. And both are called Vista Point. So one's Vista Point in Malta and one's in Vista Point in Sussex. And this is a house that's very sympathetically owned now, and you can even take your holidays there if you want. But it's got this incredible roof shape that it's like a wave itself, because here, as you can see, it's facing right out onto the English Channel. So, one of his beautiful staircases. Sorry about this slowness. And there you can see, this is the new owners. They put up this lovely wallpaper. And see the tile, always this long vertical tiles Patrick uses. And as you can see, here are the kitchen and one of the bathrooms with the tiles. So it's all white, 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 but with this color that's always coming through. And let's see, yeah. And here were his hottest clients. Lawrence Harvey, who was a very, very famous, if you remember, a movie star, Hollywood movie star, Academy Award for Room at the Top. And he married many rich women and then finally ended up with the model Pauline Stone. And here they are just a few weeks after their marriage on the cover of Cosmopolitan. But Patrick and Harvey met up about 1959, 1960, really early. And Harvey just loved to build, or think he was going to build. For example, in California, I can't remember the names of the architects, he commissioned this fabulous house that DeGeneres has just sold, for example. But because of this connection, Patrick was all of a sudden part of this party set, right? So you can see Joan Collins on the far side there, here in the purple, and Pauline. This is from Pauline's own photograph album. She's very kind at looking for photographs. We recognize Michael Caine and Pauline there. And then May 71. So, and here's Lawrence Harvey, there's that picture, and here's Patrick down in the corner. So I think he was in many ways in love with Lawrence Harvey, but he wasn't the only one. Everybody was. He was such a character, it seems. And so this is Pauline with, you recognize a few of these people, at Simon Davis Jr. and who's the? Peter Lawford, that's it. At their Malibu place. And so Patrick went out to Malibu several times as a surprise, right? Pauline took him out. Really influential on him, right? If you look at his house types, they become much more California-esque. The Homewood becomes much more California. It's the swimming pool, the bars, the saunas. I'll show you. Oh yeah, so this is Christmas together. I thought I'd show you a few funds. This is, Patrick was on this trip at Christmas, December 1970. You know, they bring their Rolls Royce over with the chauffeur, always dressed in that. And here they are on New Year's Eve in Saint-Tropez. And Pauline, even today, she's as chic as she was back then in her 90s. She always remembers this night as the night that Patrick laughed his head off, you know. So they bought this house up in Hampstead that looked like this and turned it into this. So stripping it completely. But it became, you know, a star's house with a swimming pool. He kept the facade, as you can see, but put this addition on the back, and he put this private studio on the side for Lawrence Harvey that Pauline and the children were never allowed into, with its own private entrance. So, for some reason. And there they are in the back with a Stephen Knapp. And the thing is that Harvey collected antiques. He was into modern housing, but this is the interior, completely against Patrick's style. and here, sorry about that. It's really strange, this. Okay, give me a picture. There, no? Yeah, okay. And this is the little bachelor pad that he kept for himself, designed by Patrick. And what's wonderful, it's got the two Eames chairs here. And after Lawrence Harvey died, she gave Patrick one of the Eames chairs, which is still in the Homewood. You can see him always sitting in the photograph, sitting in. And it became his favorite chair. And that's the bedroom that Lawrence Harvey actually died in, with Elizabeth Taylor crying on the side. Pauline wrote a biography afterwards all about it. It's quite dramatic. Yeah, so in the Homewood, as I say, Patrick slowly did it up. He got a lot of money from these projects, so he was able to put money into the house. So you can see there's a Stephen Knapp mural that he's put at the end. He's able to change the garden. Down at the bottom, below, it's become very California with the outdoor. A whole kitchen he's put in. He's put in a swimming pool. All these things he's learned from. And this is his boyfriend he lived with for a while, who was a concert pianist. And here he is, my final slide. He loved to take a lot of city films. So I was over for one evening, and this is, and he was showing me his films from, at the back of the sofa, he had a screen that came up. And the irony is that a lot of the furniture, like the sofa with the screen on the back, was considered a fire risk. And so the National Trust took out all these, put in reproductions, which are not quite the same. And then, I can't remember, what was the big country house that went up in fire, the National Trust, about 5 or 6 years ago? They were all in the house, and all the furniture burnt. Isn't that an irony, eh? So here's Patrick showing his films of the Brussels World's Fair, and I'd say, oh, there's nobody else in the films. Like, who did you go with? He goes, can't remember, because it was always the boyfriends. So I just wanted to end with this little clip from the National Trust. It's 3 minutes.
Hidden in 10 acres of landscaped gardens near Surrey.
The 20th century. The Homewood, built in the 30s by a young architect.
And
through the National Trust, soon to belong to the nation. Architect Patrick Gwynne is now 81, and still lives here today.
It's a terrible thing to say, but it cost £10,500, including all the built-in furniture and, yeah, I'm not going to tell you what that costs now, because one has to multiply by 100 or something. A whole lot of people came to the house, mostly our younger friends, and in those days we did an awful lot of dancing, and so hence in this room the maple floor, which is a sort of best dance floor you can possibly have. It's also sprung a bit, and it was also a large enough room that you didn't have to move the furniture very much in order to dance.
With 1,000 little stars, we can decorate the ceiling with an optimistic feeling. We can build a little hall. Every single little dream is a shingle or a ragtop. We can paint the house with laughter.
So, and that was it, really. So thank you very much.